Cincinnati has many buildings and landmarks that really make it unique. But have you ever thought about what's below the streets of Cincinnati? Hi, I'm Gail Rothmuller. Welcome to the American Dream. I'm your host, and today I'm going to take you underground to explore some of the tunnels that were used in our unique brewing history. Well, as you can see, we are underground the streets of Cincinnati, and I have Aaron Deininger with the Brewery District.
That's right.
And he is going to share some of the history of these tunnels and how they came to be. So, Aaron, can you talk a little bit about how these tunnels came to be and maybe what they were used for?
Sure. So we're standing inside the former lagering cellars of the Jackson Brewery. They were excavated in the late 1850s, and they were used to make lager beer, which is a type of beer most of us are very familiar with, but it's made through the process of cold fermentation. And this is at a time when mechanical refrigeration doesn't exist.
Okay. So you talk a little bit about why they decided to put them underground and why that made sense as far as part of the brewing process and distribution.
People figured out, especially people in the Germanic states, that if you cold fermented a beer using a different type of yeast, that you could produce a smoother type of beverage. So if you have access to underground caves, natural caves, you could stock them up with this type of beer and ferment them in there. You'd have to pack them with ice to cool it down a little further. But if you don't have access to that, then you got to make your own, and that's what they've done here. And
you said a lot of it had to do with the German heritage, perhaps, because they brought this technology over from Germany. Is that right?
That's right. So Cincinnati in the mid-19th century becomes a very German city. So 1830s, 40s, and especially in the 50s too, Cincinnati has a very large Germanic population. Many of them are calling over the Rhine neighborhood home, and many breweries spring up as a result because of the knowledge base that's coming there and the various innovations in brewing technology, but also because of the desire to drink such beers and the ability to make lots of money, of course, on that.
Do you have a rough idea of maybe how many breweries there were back in the 1800s?
But by 1859, there's 36 breweries in the city of Cincinnati. So there's a lot of them.
So they use these tunnels to primarily do what?
So these cellars are excavated out of the hillside, and there's actually two different levels of them. And we know that they were using them for a couple of different purposes because of historical records and also some great lithographs that this brewery had produced at the time to show kind of how their operations work. So on the floor above us, which is still underground, they use that primarily for fermentation. So they had large fermentation tanks there where essentially the alcohol and carbon dioxide and that sort of thing is being created by yeast. This floor that we're on, it seems like predominantly it was used for massive aging casks. So they look like giant barrels essentially that would have been, 8 or 10 feet tall down here to age the beer for up to 6 months. And then also they would have barreled it, kept it down here for cold storage, and eventually used this area to distribute the beer to the various saloons in the city or to the canal or to the riverfront to take it to other cities and that sort of thing.
Also, is this unique to Cincinnati, or are there other tunnels like this, do you think, around the United States?
Yeah, so from a history geek perspective, each tunnel has its own unique charm to it, but there is a lot of these around Cincinnati. So we're aware of a couple of dozen of these that still exist in Cincinnati. As I mentioned earlier about, all these breweries that spring up at its historic peak of, 36 breweries being here. If you wanted to make lager beer in the 1850s and 1860s, you had to have underground cellars like this. And as far as we can tell, Cincinnati has the largest number of underground lagering cellars from the 19th century out of any place else in the United States.
Tell me a little bit about what your organization has done to help preserve these unique structures.
Our organization, the Brewery District, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We came about 20 years ago, and our goal is to see positive improvements made in the over the Rhine neighborhood, especially the northern portion, which we call the Brewery District. We started delivering brewing history tours in the neighborhood very informally, and it's something we do much more formally today. In the past couple of years, we usually average about 350 tours per year. We take about 4,000 people on these tours around to showcase Cincinnati's Cincinnati's brewing history and also other aspects of the neighborhood's history. One of our most recent projects was working at the Bruckman Brewery site in order to open the underground cellars for the public. We had to remove all that, rebuild the whole staircase that leads a couple of stories underground. We had to replace some roofing to keep the water out and that type of thing. So that's the type of work that we do.
How do you work hand in hand with maybe the new age craft brewing community here in Cincinnati?
So we do these tours, and they're brewing history tours for the most part. Generally, people want to drink a beer on them, so we usually, at the very least, end the tour at a local tap room, typically around the over the Rhine neighborhood, where people can, try a local beer. Sometimes there's beer tastings, that type of thing involved in them. But the other way that we work with local breweries is we organize Bockfest every year. So that's Cincinnati's Over the Rhine's beer festival. It happens the first weekend in March every year, and if you're not familiar with it, it's Cincinnati's, and some people say most Cincinnati festival, where there's goats and monks and goat monks, and there's a parade and all kinds of various activities. Well, we invite local brewers to produce a Bock beer that we'll serve at Bockfest. We usually have 25 to 30 different Bocks from local breweries that are served at Bockfest. So that's another way that we reach out to try and showcase local breweries and get people to try their beer and hopefully go to their tap rooms and try more and that type of thing.
Well, we really appreciate your time today. You have a great knowledge, and we appreciate everything you do for the city of Cincinnati and making the history continue to the future. So thank you.
Sure, no, thanks. I appreciate you coming down here to chat. I'm always looking to talk about history.
Absolutely. And until next time, I'm Gail Rothmuller with the American Dream, and continue to celebrate Cincinnati.